The question is, what does Kyle Shanahan do? Does Kyle Shanahan say to himself, well, I guess the fun I was having with Deebo, done with that, back to some normal play calls, or does Kyle Shanahan find another way? And this week happens to be a week in which Kyle said something the other day that got our attention. We did a whole segment about it on the podcast. Kyle said he's learned the hard lesson about how hard it is to work Trey Lance into the offense. And basically said to the world, I'm putting him on ice, without saying those words. Or did he just want the Seahawks to believe that's what he's doing?
Yeah, they're in a little bit of a desperate situation, just given that this injury is an enormous part of the offense. It's not just losing, it's losing their running back / receiver. I mean, this guy has had 14 carries the last 2 games for 165 yards and multiple touchdowns on the ground. And obviously, I don't think you would put Trey Lance at running back.
Right.
But I do think you could immediately put him in some of those situations, in short yardage situations, with him and Elijah Mitchell, or even Fred Wilson, to just give some different looks. Right? Because I was driving around thinking, do you think you'd mess around and put Ayuk in the backfield and you're like, that's a lot going on. Like, Deebo clearly is very comfortable. You mentioned, you were talking to a coach that was with him at South Carolina and said that the Raven scout had said, like, yeah, we just don't draft running backs that high. It's not, and you and I remember the first OTAs we went to, or definitely training camp, and we saw Deebo for the first time. His body type does not look like Keenan Allen, right, or Devontae. He is built very uniquely. When we just talk about the top receivers, he doesn't look anything like them body-wise. Where really you stand next to Ayuk, he looks like a wide receiver. So I do wonder if Kyle pulls it out kind of a little bit of a curveball, just given that they haven't been using him. Now, on the flip side, you see Seattle just signed Adrian Peterson. Like, they're in shambles right now. So it's weird, because if Seattle was your typical 3-8 Houston Texans, I don't think we'd be talking about that we're the appropriate fear.
Right.
But I think you and I and most Niner fans talk about them more. Yeah, they're 3-8, but I view them like they're 6-5, right? Like, they're having a down year, but they're still good. Like, in my head, I view them like, yeah, they could win this game by 10, right? And
specifically,
so
their quarterback is like 15-4 against you, right? Russell Wilson, whatever that. I think it's 15-4 is his career record, something like that.
And think about, and guy, the 49ers won the Super Bowl 2 years ago with, just a fantastic team, right? Start to finish. Was the best team in the league, right there with the Chiefs. And they were by far the best 2 teams in the league. The Niners lost in overtime to Seattle that year, and Seattle was a flawed team that year, lost in overtime. And then the final game where the Niners won the West at Seattle, it was a knockdown dragout, right? So it's like, this team, when they're good and the Niners are good, they can hang. You just can never, ever discount this matchup. So wouldn't shock me if Trey has some reps, but I also could you do some really weird stuff and put him and Jimmy in the game at the same time? Can you risk Trey getting hurt, and then if Jimmy got hurt, who the fuck would play quarterback?
Well, I mean, you're trying to win all these games, right? We've talked about that part of what Kyle is doing is just focused on winning this game and then win the next game, and I'm just focused on the right now. So anybody going on the field is at risk of being hurt. I mean, yeah. Deebo Samuel's at risk of being hurt every time he takes a handoff and runs through 7 people, although often doesn't get touched, so maybe he's at not that much of risk.
Feels like the holes are really big too when he plays.
Huge. So this is the guy Kyle Shanahan, who was willing to run a play with Jeff Wilson Jr. at tight end and got him wide open in the Jags game. Remember, to end that first drive, and just missed him. That was the formation. Jeff Wilson Jr. was lined up at tight end. George Kittle was in the backfield. It was bizarre.
Was that when George Kittle was at fullback? Juszczyk was at running back.
Yes.
And
Jeff Wilson Jr. was attached on the left of the line, just off of Trent Williams.
Wasn't Ayuk also at tight end or something?
Maybe Ayuk. Yeah. Was Ayuk in the backfield on that play?
I just remember someone tweeted picture and listed the 7 positions: tight end at fullback at running back, wide receiver at tight end at tackle. No, maybe Ayuk was a tackle or something. It was weird.
That's right. I think it was that. Yeah. I think it was something bizarre like that. But so you're telling me that guy? Now, I do think you agree, I believe, that there's a lot of truth in what Kyle said the other day about the difficulty of working Trey Lance in. I think it's true. I think that's real. But also,
I think that quote was more big picture, like why I never really thought about just making him the full-time starter.
Yeah, see, to me, that quote was more about like if I put him in at a certain spot, it's harder for me then to play the rhythm of the offense. I think your take was it was a reflection of what he learned out of the Cardinal game, but I also think it was him saying, when I bring this quarterback in halfway through a game for a series, now the defense is not doing anything that I recognize.
Yeah, he wasn't talking about just like bringing him in for one play, running a run play, right? Because he doesn't care what the coverage is. Yeah, he was kind of resulting back to or going back to rewinding to week 3 of the preseason when he just ran series and then went back to Jimmy. Like that's not possible,
right? So that guy who did all that crazy shit in the Jags game and has been doing that stuff since, and then decided, we're going to use Deebo both ways. He really can't find a way to make up for Deebo's loss by working Trey Lance in. I think you're right. I think it might be something more like what you described with both of them on the field at the same time. Anthony in the stream says, remember Kyle's comments after the draft where he basically said, don't ever trust what he says. Akash says, Ayuk was in a 3-point stance. Ayuk handed the dirt, says Matt. Yeah. So,
when I was watching the Mannings had on Michael Irvin like a month ago, if you go back to Miami tape, he's like, their wide receivers used to have their hand in the dirt, like flexed out wide. And
really?
He's like, at the time, the wide receiver coach made a lot of sense. He's like, we were all track guys in high school. He's like, when you guys run track, your hand's in the dirt. He's like, yeah, you get a faster start. And he's like, looking back, they were making fun of him.
Yeah.
But obviously, Ayuk was more for like fucking with the formation. I'm talking like out wide, hand in the dirt.
Yep.
Football's come a long way since like the late 80s.
There's a lot of crazy shit that offensive coordinators do out there all the time.
I also think, wouldn't you say on the flip
Kyle's
side,
one of them.
Wouldn't Seattle have to just be a complete kitchen sink game for them? Like, what do you got to lose at this point?
For Seattle?
Yeah, try some just wild shit.
Yeah, it just depends. Are they all in?
Yeah, might quit.
Is the team all in? But you're
Russell
right. At this point, what are they trying to accomplish? Just, I guess, not lose a rivalry game at this point?
Yeah, remember several years ago, the Bosa year, the Niners won that game in December against a good Seattle team, and they were terrible.
Yeah.
It's just, I think you see it, all these divisional games as the season goes on, like the Vikings played Detroit. Like, what the hell is Detroit playing for? Well, would it shock you if it's a tie game in the third quarter? Like, these teams just play hard if they have any sort of... The thing in football, I think more than basketball and definitely more than baseball, you're just not on scholarship. Like, how many guys on Seattle beside like Jamal, Bobby Wagner, and Russell feel like confident, like my job is safe, right? It's just a nature of the sport a little bit.
You're saying how that player should feel or how we view that player?
No, I'm saying like
DK feels like he's at risk?
I'd throw him in that mix with those guys too. I'm just saying most guys, like your right guard, your linebacker, your random corner, like you just play. You don't really half-ass it in football like you do in basketball. Now, week 17, you really might mail it in. I do think for the most part, like guys truly try hard week in, week out all over the league. Same with college football. Sometimes you just get beat, right? Because like you can get cut. How many guys on Seattle, that weren't drafted by Seattle have just been cut probably in their life? It's just a nature of the sport. It's why it sounds cheesy, but like coaches hammer this shit home. Like, and luckily the Niners, this is like they ain't good enough to go to fucking play anybody. Like we're better than. Like they asked Kyle yesterday, like, do you feel better, different in the room? He's like, for what? Winning 3 games? It's not like we've won. It's not like you're the Chiefs and gone to 2 straight Super Bowls, right? Like you didn't. You missed the Super Bowl or you missed the playoffs last year. So
I think we'll get to the Seattle thing in a second because I think it's a telling game for them. But do you think that any part of what Kyle was saying this week about how hard it is for him to work Trey in, any part of it in the back of his mind thought this is one way to mislead Seattle and sneak Trey Lance into the game?
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But by the time he talks, a huge part of your game plan is Monday night and Tuesday. So now with a divisional opponent, it's a fluid carryover thing, right? Like what would the Bengals be considered? What do they call the uncommon opponent? I would say Seattle's a little different. Like how many times now has Kyle faced Ken Norton and Pete? In terms of he's the OC versus their defense. So it's, I don't think it's he might stumble upon, I think like this look and this look with Trey, because they've only played them one time with Trey, and Trey played in that game, so maybe he's comfortable. Yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But I would, even if he plays, it would be, small amount sample size. Like I wouldn't expect like, oh, he got 15 plays. Like I would be stunned. I'd be all for it. That'd be cool. But I don't expect that. Do you? Like even if I told you right now, Kyle was lying, Trey's gonna play. Like I told you, hey guy, I got inside information. Peter's just texted me. Get ready for a little Trey show this week. I said, how many plays would you guess?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's 4, maybe 5.
Yeah.
I think
short yardage shit. Even though Jimmy's pretty good at that sneak, they sneak.
Yeah,
third too.
It's not about necessarily needing to pick up a yard so much as it is about just having another pitch. Right now, if you look back last week, Deebo had 6 carries and 4 targets. The week before against the Jags, Deebo had 8 carries and 2 targets. So what you're trying to replace, based on the last 2 weeks of usage, is 10 touches. Deebo only had 1 catch and 4 targets last week, but 4 targets, right? That's what you're trying to replace with Deebo is, and it's, I don't know if you'll be able to get, like 2 weeks ago, he was 10 touches for basically 100 yards. And then last week, how many yards did he have in total?
We had 66 on the ground.
And only 1 catch, so it's hard to account for those targets. I mean, one of them was an end zone shot. But it was 12 and 66, so 78. So you're trying to create 75 to 100 yards with some other plays.
Which isn't nothing, right? I mean, you only have 350, 400 yards of offense. That's a quarter of your offense.
Yeah.
and the touchdowns.
But it's not. That's what I'm saying. You're going to have to piece that together. That's not all Trey.
Don't just, or all Jeff Wilson is not picking up those yards.
But I think Trey Lance could be a way that you create 25 yards, or 20, whatever.
I do think a nice Kittle 120 receiving. Could you get 7, 8 catches for $140 from George? Maybe just a George on the highest paid tight end in the game.
You could use one of those games.
Yeah.
But again, like you're not taking everything. You're saying, George, what you do plus what Deebo does. You're still piecing it together a little bit here when you lose a player as valuable as Deebo.
The good thing is they have 2 premium talents, obviously George, but even Ayuk. Can I up their usage rate 20% each? George, easily you can. Ayuk, like, hey, could I get my 8 for 100 game out of you?
The thing with Kittle is you're like, well, his usage rate is 100%. It's just,
I know.
Is he passing? Is he catching or blocking? Pass blocking, run blocking, pass catching.
Or just give it to Elijah 30 times for 150 yards. Just run it down their throat.
Yeah.